Hey, what's going on, class? It's Dr. Humpage. It's Friday. I got some questions yesterday about this week's assignment, and it occurred to me that it might be good to do a little bit of a Excel tutorial myself here and show you how I tackle these types of problems. It never hurts to have more resources, and I have to admit, going through atomic learning can sometimes be a little bit unwieldy and hard to find. So, better to have some things front and center for you. So let me just get out of my screen recorder here, and I want to take you to an Excel page I have set up. What I have here is just two rows of data. And so, with this first problem set that we have this week, all you're going to really need is two rows of data. The goals for today are to array our data, and then create a frequency table and a histogram. A lot of the challenges with the stats course, and any stats course you're going to have, is kind of using the software and figuring out the little nuances. And so today we'll go through a few of those, and hopefully at the end of it, you'll feel like you can have a little bit better sense of direction for what to do. We'll get some of our basic steps down with Excel today. One thing that's important that I do want to point out is within Excel, and we're using Excel 2016, there's a little tool pack that you have to enable. And so it's another reason why I decided to make this video for you today. So I'm going to go to File, and underneath this little, it's below my screen. So let me see if I can bring down my screen a little bit here. There we go. I have successfully moved it. There's a little menu here called Options. So we're going to click on Options. And within our Options menu, there's a bunch of stuff. It's kind of one of those things where I'm not too computer savvy myself. And so it always takes me a while to figure these things out. So there's an add-ins option that we're going to take. And then we're going to see a button down here that says Manage Excel Add-ins. And we're going to hit Go. And what are these? These are just little things that, I guess they're add-ins. They're add-ins to the program that help us do some of the data analysis. For this course, we want to have a couple of those enabled. And so what I do is I have this tool pack enabled and the tool pack VBA enabled. And so those are two that I use and that you should have enabled as well. So as we start out the course, let's just get those enabled on your programs, know how to enable those, and we'll move on. So we're going to click OK. I'm going to shift my screen up just a little bit for you. Make sure I bring everything in the recording zone here. All right, so what you'll see if you click the data menu, I don't need to import data. You'll see this little data analysis tools menu appear. And so that's going to be an important one that we're going to use, and we're going to use it today. And so I just enabled that with that whole options bit that I just did. And that's really the most complex thing we'll do today. Everything else is going to be pretty much downhill from there. So let's actually talk about my problem, my data, and my bins, and how I arrange my data. So what I decided to do, I wanted to come up with a problem that would be similar to your weights of Coke problem, and would have a lot of decimals in it. I still find decimals tricky, so I had to put some thought into this one. But what I did was I imagined a scenario where I had a football team and I had the players run the 40-yard dash, and then it would generate a bunch of 40-yard dash times. And so I've got a range of 40 times from 4.19, which is insanely fast, to 4.71, which is also pretty darn fast, But if, you know, we're imagining it's maybe like an NFL team, this might look like our running backs and receivers would all be pretty fast players. So that's my data set, and that's my range of data. If we go over to the next column, you'll see that I've set up some bins. As you read about, and you know, along with this week's reading, you know, a bin is simply a range where you're trying to establish sort of a bin's a great word for it. It's sort of a collection bin for a frequency table. So what I did is I arbitrarily just came up with bins that I think would be good to collect frequency data on my data set. You'll notice with Excel that you don't want to have in your bin column like a range of something. So for example, you don't want to have 3.9 to, well, intuitively that makes sense to us because that actually defines our bin, right? We know that Excel can't read that data. Excel only wants to see the upper limits. So I have my bins arranged to show upper limits of the bin. So if I were to fill in, you know, sort of like the what they really mean for the purposes of our so intuitively, you know, this is what we're doing, but Excel can't read that. I'm just going to leave that alone. But what I'm going to do when I create a, you know, a frequency table and a histogram, I'm going to use this bin range here that's nice and clean and just has the upper limits. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'm going to go ahead and create a histogram for you. You know, the histogram function in this data analysis toolpack is really all you'll need to do to make frequency tables and histograms in the course. It's kind of a one-step process. Works really well. So I'm going to open that menu, and I'm going to pick out histogram. And I'm going to hit OK. I don't know about you all. You know, I find Excel to be not like the most user-friendly thing ever, but it's not horrible. So sometimes you gotta be a little bit of a maestro with your how you select data using the mouse. So what I've done here is I've got my input range, and that's the actual data. It's the actual data that I'm putting into the histogram. So all my 40 times are in there. Next thing I'm gonna pick is my bin range, and so I've got my bins. I'll pick all of those, and they are in. It takes a little bit of practice to kind of learn how when you select the data, it kind of clicks into the tables. I'll let you work that out. It's part of the learning curve. I am going to click this box though for labels, and all this really means is simply that, you know, I've got labels included, so Excel won't count what is in this top row as labels. It'll leave that out. So it'll just know to read those as labels and move on with the histogram. I'm going to click this button too. This is output range. All this is asking me to do is to pick a box. Pardon that. All it's asking me to do is to just pick a box to display my histogram. And the last thing that I'm going to pick is chart output. And this is really just telling the program that I want to create a chart, which I do because I want to create a nice histogram. And so I've got that all set up, and I'm going to click OK. And there we are. Let me expand this a little bit for you. So what I've got is my bins and the number of 40 times that fell into each bin. So when we look at our data, We can see that most of the players on my team ran a 40 time somewhere, toward the middle. Most of my players, or I should say, the most frequent players were around the 4.5, 4.6, 4.4 area. Less were, a little bit faster, less were a little bit slower, but it kind of shows you the shape of my data. And that's really what you have to analyze this week as you talk about it, is just describe what you see. Where did the data lie, and what can you infer about the data from a pretty basic frequency table histogram. So that's really it. And that's pretty much the assignment this week. People can take it a step further if they like, and label stuff differently, or add some bells and whistles. But that's kind of the basic thing. And so really the things I want you to get out of today, if I can kind of summarize it, is for starters, do recall that we want to enable that tool pack, right? So add-ins, Excel add-ins, those tool packs. Make sure you do that. And then think about how you're just putting your data in. You just want your bins to be those upper limits. You don't want to confuse Excel by giving ranges. Even though that makes intuitive sense to us, it's not something we want to do. And then, once that we have that data tool pack enabled, we can pretty easily make a histogram, and comes out pretty clear, pretty easy, makes sense to us. So I hope this was helpful for you. I'm going to attach another video of someone I think who does this better than me, but I do think it's important for me to get out there and do some of this stuff myself, because I shouldn't be asking you anything to do. Rather, I shouldn't be asking you to do anything that I myself am not willing to do, right? So that's kind of a basic rule. So thank you so much for listening in and listening to me drone on a bit, and keep shooting me your questions as we work through this material this week. Thanks so much.